So I wanted to welcome you to our workshop. And today we're going to be talking about how we're addressing violence and the criminalization of youth in this country. I'm so excited to introduce a man who, when I was younger, people told me it's not about what you do, it's about the legacies you leave. And I feel like Mr. Harry Belafonte, Mr. B to me, and all the young activists I know in this world who have shaped me is such a reflection of that. Because I can't just say that I've been influenced by Mr. Belafonte himself. The key for me is that the work Mr. Belafonte has done has influenced every person who's made me a better person in this world. But he hasn't just been an artist and an activist in the civil rights era. He hasn't just been an artist and an activist in the 80s as we're becoming a global nation in so many ways. But he's been an artist and an activist even with our generation. He's focused especially on US and Africa. This is very true. But Mr. Belafonte, Mr. B, was the first recipient of the Nelson Mandela Courage Award. He was honored at the White House in 1994 with the National Medal of Arts from President Clinton for his contributions to the US and their cultural life. And in 2013, he was the recipient of the Spingarn Award, which was the most prestigious award bestowed by the NAACP. But most importantly, Mr. Belafonte embodies speaking truth to power. And every day he reminds us that we should be speaking truth to power. And why are we doing this work? So for me, I want to introduce Mr. Harry Belafonte, Mr. B.
Let me first of all express my great sense of joy and to have the privilege and the opportunity to talk to you. Of the many things that have impacted upon our social conduct, on our rhythm of human events and the things that we do to one another, those of us who live on the tragic side of a lot of social experience is constantly fed too many opportunities to come back into the fray and to energize social activism and to create the courage of resistance by people who are victimized by all sorts of social oppressions. In the United States of America, I don't think it was just a mere coincidence that the interlocking mechanisms of our government were created by those who drafted the Constitution of Governance had ever conceived that there would come a time when perhaps all of the mechanisms and devices put together to keep this country on a path open to democracy, open to truth, open to spiritual as well as physical development, that those systems would have one day would come under such severe attack that the systems themselves beginning to be dismantled. We have the executive branch of government, we have the Supreme Court, we have two houses of our Congress, and of course the last and the most powerful is the populace themselves, the people. Here we find ourselves with the Supreme Court, the supreme body of decision making, stacked against citizens in this country who are fall under two banners. The banner of absence of economic opportunity because they're poor. The other banner is the banner of race because they're people of color. And the Supreme Court of the United States strikes down laws that we sought to gain and fought for and valiantly achieved, then turn around to tell us that we no longer have the need for transparency and vigilance on giving a platform to people to vote unencumbered by any mechanisms that would turn people away from the polls is a grievous, grievous fault. Dr. King, who was not only my friend and my brother, a mentor and a philosopher that I could follow, had pointed out in his wisdom and in his analysis of history, his own ideas as a minister of the gospel, the greatest tool that has ever been given civilization was the idea that the vote could become an instrument through which all grievances could be settled. People could speak to issues and come to a place where the collective could reach a decision that would not only enhance humanity, but give us the opportunity to know that we have always got a chance to, if we should make a mistake in the choices we've made, to correct those mistakes. Because the ballot will always be accessible and available. And that most of the things that we look for in democracy and spiritual uplifting is embedded in that idea. It took place a long time ago, back in the days of the Greeks and Democrates, who came up with the idea of democracy, left something wide open that I'm not quite sure where it'll go in the final analysis. It's so changing, it's so mercurial, it's so sensitive to the touch of courageous thought. But that has been denied. And I think that of all the things that have gone on, prison incarceration, the United States of America, the largest prison population in the world, children, and all the statistics I'm sure you know, we find ourselves once again here under attack. And as has been the tradition in my case, whenever I come up against a force that is larger than I can imagine, that seems to be invincible, it is at that moment when I begin to retreat to a place that Dr. King led me. I don't look at evil as something that is so omnipotent that it cannot be dealt with. Each of us, however, do have a responsibility to find out what portion of the change machine can we engage to upend oppression. In this moment in my life, I took a look at what's been going on here. I spent a lot of time in the prisons of America. I spent a lot of time in the communities where the prison has its harvest. I spent a lot of time with young people in jail, in foster homes, in the streets, late at night, early in the morning. I am constantly among them. As a matter of fact, what compels me at this very moment to not be able to engage more deeply in the discourse to be held is the fact that I'm on my way to another call from young people who've expressed a need to have counsel. And so I'm going down to Florida with a young man by the name of Philip Acme and a host of other young people who are resisting the tyranny of the state, are asking for the elders and asking for some of us to come and just sit with them. I don't go for photo op. I don't go for the platform. None of that is of any interest to me. I'm going to sit young people who have stepped into the breach the way we did. They see in us a mirror of themselves. They see in us someone who back in the days when we were their age. After all, Dr. King was 24. I was 26 and I was already an old man for our cause. When you had John Lewis and you had Julian Bond and you had Diane Nash, and I can go on, hundreds and thousands of names. Young people in their teens stepped into the heart of tyranny, stepped into the heart of aggression, who were hung and shot and beaten and imprisoned, who went through all of that. We were not deterred, and we were rewarded because we did for the first time get the right to vote. We did for the first time get the right to talk about we can pursue a dream of equality, a dream of opportunity, a dream to do all the things that all human beings have a right to expect. When we come under that attack, we find ourselves overwhelmed because the opposition, each time we confront them, each time we defeat them, they don't retreat and go someplace and get lost. They retreat and go someplace to quickly examine how they lost. They're trying to hold and invent instantly new ways in which to deprive us of the tools, gave us the opportunity to be free when our turn came. And that is here again. It is here again. In my world, art is the tool that I can most apply. It serves me and it serves my life richly. But it wasn't without design. Because in my life, a mentor stepped into my space, and said something to a group of young black actors on the threshold of seeking to have art as their voice for their future. And this man's name was Paul Robeson, a great giant, an African American who not only captured the imagination of people globally, and that was a joy to watch. He spoke most of the languages of the earth. He not only spoke all the Romance languages, but he spoke many dialects from Africa and Swahili, and Nengo, and he spoke Zulu, Xhosa, but all the Romance languages, and even some dialects in China. And he not only could sing them, speaking them, but he could sing them. He sang the songs of all the peoples of the earth, and they enjoyed him and revered him. But not just for the power of his physical art, it was the content of his art that inspired them. And in that shadow is where I've tried to live my own life. Not with his greatness or his elegance, but I could give it a run for the money. And in fact, through him, I'll never forget the first day that he said, you know, it's a wonderful thing you've touched here in the pursuit of art. Because artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And art is the radical voice of civilization. And with that small anointing, that small observation, we felt empowered. We are the gatekeepers of truth. And all we had to understand was that we needed to use our platform to speak the truth, to tell our history, to speak of ourselves, to take people who are in doubt and to erase doubt by making them familiar with the world in which they lived and the peoples who were their neighbors. We stepped into that space, into that place, and we churned it up again because the opposition has co-opted that. They are the power that tells you that culture is meant to entertain, not to inform. Culture is meant to please and to keep us in some mindless place, not to stimulate and to inspire. It is not profitable